And then another important is adhering to the principles of forgiveness. That really forgiving and just letting it go. And one of the things that people in relationships will do is they'll hold on to these things, and it's just infantile behavior, and you have to see it for what it is. You're a pouting little child. That's all you're doing, and you're trying to make the other person miserable for doing something to you. It's infantile behavior. And you need to snap out of it. And we all will fall into that. But you have to snap out of it and just remind yourself. And if the other person reminds you of it, take the reminder. Don't make your life miserable for yourself and for others. Because that's all it is. And it doesn't, in the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So if something happens that upsets you, just let it go. And it will happen. It'll happen many, many times throughout your life. But just let it go. Don't hold on to it. The danger is not that it happens. That's going to happen. It's a given. The danger is that you never learn to overcome the desire to hold on to it. And it becomes also, people derive perverse pleasure in that. So that happens. You get a pleasure in making somebody feel miserable. And one of the things about, they've done studies on cheerfulness and things, and cheerfulness and good nature is very contagious. If somebody is in a cheerful and a good nature, they can actually affect other people much more powerfully than irritability, although irritability is also contagious, but it doesn't spread as easily as good nature. I mean, they've done really interesting studies about this, to watch this. And depression is difficult, very difficult to actually be transferred to somebody. It can happen. If you live with a depressed person, you can become depressed, but it's actually difficult for that to happen. It's quite unusual. But well-being does not. You can actually transform somebody's state quite easily if you're up and they're down. And you can see this with children. If children pout and do these things, you can, just with silly faces and things, you can get them to break a smile. And once you've got them there, they know. They can't hold on to it. So it's interesting just breaking that infantile desire. And I think the Prophet ﷺ was an absolute master, like everything he did. He was a master at that, of breaking that state that people got into. And it doesn't mean that he didn't have periods. There were difficult periods. But generally, that was what he did. Now, it's important to keep in mind that marital life, due to the constant interaction and to psycho-emotional states that people go through. We go through different psycho-emotional states throughout the day or the week or the month. And that there's situations where discontent, displeasure occur, and you can do these things. These are normal occurrences. And even the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha radiallahu anhu, the Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha, I know when you're upset with me. And she said, how do you know that? And he said, because when you're pleased with me, you say, Wa Rabbi Muhammad, by the Lord of Muhammad. But when you're upset with me, you say, Wa Rabbi Ibrahim, by the Lord of Ibrahim. And Aisha laughed, and she said, that's true, by Allah, it's true. I would never abandon anything but your name. I mean, that's an example. And then also this idea that the Prophet ﷺ said, a mu'min should never dislike a believer. If he dislikes one quality, he should focus on the qualities he likes. So every person is going to have things that bother you and things that you like about them. And the thing about your spouse is that you should look at those qualities that are pleasing. Also, the Prophet ﷺ said, the most perfect of believers in faith are those with the most excellent character. And the best of you are the best of you to your women. And there's a beautiful poem by Jalaluddin al-Rumi, where he said, the Prophet ﷺ said that women totally dominate men of intellect and possessors of hearts. But ignorant men dominate women, for they are shackled by an animal ferocity. They have no kindness, gentleness, or love, since animality dominates their nature. Love and kindness are human attributes. Anger and sensuality belong to the animals. That comes from a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ was talking to some women, and he said, I've never seen a creature that has more possession over a man of intellect than you. So what Rumi was taking that to another level of understanding, that the reason that they have so much power over is because these are people that have conquered their animal soul. And so they're not people that are going to dominate women. They're not people that are going to oppress. They're actually people that, because of the love and kindness that has overcome their souls, they actually allow the women their shortcomings without demanding change. And that's what Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said about the verse in the Quran, وَلِلْرِجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةً, that men have 1 degree over women. That's what he said it was. He said it was relinquishing the right of a man for the woman. تَنَازُرْ عَنَ الْحَقِّ. Whereas he would not relinquish her rights. In other words, he would fulfill all of her rights, but he would not demand of her all of his rights. That is the degree that men have over women. And that's Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, who's the translator of the Quran. And one of the things also is just going the path of least resistance. Water puts out fire. Fire increases fire. If you look at the Prophet ﷺ, that was his strategy with people. Umar radiallahu anhu said, I once roared at my wife, and she answered back. I rebuked her for bandying words with me. She then said, why should you rebuke me for answering you back? By Allah, the wives of the Prophet dispute with him and even ignore him for a night and a day. So, she was saying, who do you think you are? Basically, that's what it is. He's saying, who do you think you are? The wives of the Prophet ﷺ do this to the Prophet, and he is the best example. So I think in that hadith, there's a real, and he went and indeed found that from Hafsa. He went and asked Hafsa, who was his daughter, do you do that? And he was shocked. But it changed his attitude, and we have when he was Khalifa, the man who came to his house, knocked on the door, and then he heard Omar's wife yelling at him, and he left. And Omar came out and said to him, what happened? He said, nothing. He said, no, you came, knocked on my door, what'd you want? He said, I didn't want anything. And he said, by Allah, tell me what you want. He said, well, I was going to come complain about my wife. but when I heard your wife, I said there was no point in complaining to you. And Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, this is my wife, the mother of my children. She maintains my house, cooks my food. Shouldn't I have patience with her if she gets upset with me? So there's the man who, roared. That's the change that occurred in him. And that's the point. People can change.